What's this? Has Chadwick Parkway at last got a platform? Surely not. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie, and in this video we're going to have a little look at scratch building a curved platform. Bit of a challenge, no doubt. So let's take a look at the Chadwick Parkway area where I intend to build it. Now I've got to complain about a mistake I made in the last video. I installed a fence either side of this railway line. Well, in all honesty, that was a mistake because this internal fence shouldn't have been there, because in the 60s and 70s health and safety wasn't that prevalent, and British Rail wouldn't really have cared about their people falling down the embankment, you know, getting stung in the bushes or whatever. It's only in modern times when health and safety has become so much more focused, let's say. So I do need, the first thing I need to do is to clearly rip out this fence, and then in slow time I will make good the area. Right, so what are we going to do now? Well, let's bring in a couple of trains and I'll show you how I envisage the platform sort of working. So here we have a 3-car DMU destined for platform 3. And for platform 2 we have a warship hauling a 6-coach train. Now perhaps the first thing we need to think about is where our trains are going to stop. Now clearly this platform 3 is a 3-car platform, or a bubble car with a 2-car unit, but anyway you're not really going to get in more than a 3-car unit in there. Right, so we need a signal to control this line. Now we have the fast up and platform 2, and where are we going to stop our loco? So we can't stop them too close to this junction because obviously there'll be an issue here, and the same with the fast up, but we need to be able to stop them in a position where they can see their signals. Now excuse this old cheapy dapple signal affair. Now if I was to invest in something not dissimilar to this, we would want the loco to be close enough where it can see the signal, but not too close, as it were. So that's the kind of distance that I'm thinking about for the signal gantry, though it could sort of come closer, and that's where the stopping distance is for this train, and similarly on a train on the fast up. Right, okay, so we've decided where our locos are going to stop, so now we need to think about where our platforms are going to start. Now clearly we need the passengers from these coaches to be able to alight onto a platform here. So we need the platform ramp, the rising ramp, to end here. So this area here has to be at the top of the ramp. So to that end, if the ramp were there, that's the kind of distance that we need it to be. So if I just shove this back a minute, and we would need the ramp to end about here. So if I mark this up now, so the ramp could start around here, but the top of the ramp needs to be in this area here. So if I put top and B for bottom, let's say, right, we'll bring our warship back and we're going to stop him there. Now clearly the first coach here is already at the top of the ramp, so that is an issue. Right, so we're kind of good to go on this end. So we need to construct a ramp section that narrows down here. So firstly, we shall put this back into its kind of most forward position and take a look at the other end. Now you can see that it's a 6-car train, and right at the far end there, before the line turns, you can see that last coach. And you can also see that it's a relatively gentle curve on this platform. Now, if there were another coach on the top of here, so I'll move the train back 1 coach length. Now you can see that this is in the curve, and it really wouldn't be suitable for a 7-car train. I think because of the limitations of Chadwick, it needs to be, the local trains need to be no longer than 6 cars. Obviously the scenic trains can be much longer because they will run straight through. And similarly on platform 1, it's the same kind of thing. Really, you're limited to a locomotive and 6 coaches. So here is the end of the platform. So I'll put a T for top, and then using that ramp once more, that would be the bottom of the ramp. Right, so now our passengers can both board and alight the train safely. Now we need to talk about platform height, so it's time for a bit of mathematics. Now here we have a Bachmann coach on a piece of Code 100 track, and I put alongside it a piece or a couple of pieces of the Hornby train set platforms, and as you can see, they line up pretty much with the doors. They're at the ideal height. But what height are these? Well, actually they are as near as damn it 19 millimeters. Now for the platform sides, I intend to use the Pico reinforced concrete stuff because this is a sort of a post-war platform wall. Now, so what's the measurements of this? Well, you'll be astounded to know that it's, well, there we go, 19 millimeters. Now, as you can see, my track is mounted on Woodland Scenic's HO scale track bed, which happens to be 5 millimeters thick. So we start off with our Woodland Scenic's track bed sitting below the sleeper level. So we start off at -5. Then we add our blue foam. So that is plus 20 mil, which equals 15. How are we getting there? And if we add to that 3 mil cork plus 3 equals 18 millimeters. Beautiful, ideal for railway modelling. Now the next thing I need to do is to make a template. So I'm just using this cheap 5mm foam board from Hobbycraft, and all I'm going to do is make, like I say, a complete template that runs all the way through in a couple of pieces. And when I get that right, then I can transfer that on top of the foam, then cut the foam, and to make a decent job of that. Now I've trimmed the foam board to fit underneath the retaining wall when it comes in, and that's the dimension that will be transferred. But if you remember last week with the other foam, what I did was I banged the board and it got an imprint from the track below. So I'm wondering if this will work. So mind your ears. And you may be able to see the track marks on the foam board. Now, as you can see, I started to trim off the edge of the foam board. Now, if I can sort of scribe a line, if I can put a finger on the track and then draw a line parallel to the track by pushing one finger against the rail, never as easy as you think. So we have our sort of templates in place now. I did it in 3 pieces. It's kind of, well, it's not exactly accurate, let's say, but we're kind of getting there. But it'll give a decent representation when we go to cut it out onto the foam board. Now, in the pack, there are 5 of these boards. So you can get at least 1 board onto that piece there. And so it will take about 3 pieces to do this. So I've got 2 spare boards. Right, there we are then. We're certainly getting somewhere. Okay, a change of plan. The edge of this is quite sloppy. So what I've got is a set of dividers. Sadly, I don't have a compass. Now, if I put one edge of this against the rail and the other scriber down the edge of the foam board, I ought to get a more accurate representation of where to cut it. That way the new line should be much more accurate. Now, before I can finalise exactly where the foam board is going to go, it's worth a mention about this Woodland Scenics track bed because of this angle. Now, if I put this in place, hopefully you can see that it's too far away from this coach. It needs to be closer. Oops. So if we move it on a little bit, and then hopefully you can see now that by removing that angle and cutting that piece away, I can now move this in considerably closer to get the right distance from the coping stones of this Pico platform piece in relation to the doors on the coach. So what I intend to do now is to remove this angled piece from both this line and the line on this side that feeds platform 2. Now, using the scribing method, I've actually replaced these templates and they now fit much more snug, and I've taken away that foam shoulder off the Woodland Scenics track bed. And here are my 5 pieces of foam, which cost me about 20 quid, ready to hack up. Now, in the last video, I used a Woodland Scenics foam cutter and it ended up in the bin. But a couple of people recommended using the Ryobi, I imagine it's called. Anyway, I bought one of these. We'll give it a go. Not that I might need it for this project, but I do need a foam cutter. They do come in handy. Anyway, I'll try that and see how we get on. Now, cutting through the foam can be a little bit of a dilemma due to its depth, because my normal Stanley knife can barely get through this in one cut, and it's also noteworthy that it's very easy to get the angle wrong. You know, as you're cutting through, it's very easy to come off the vertical. So what I thought I would try is one of these little beasts from Stanley, and it's a retractable blade, but if you put it out to sort of 2.5 sort of blades, these things snap off, but at that sort of dimension then we'll cut straight through without too much problem. Be careful you're not cutting through into your workbench. But anyway, if you want a bit more depth, you can use one of these, and you can always use the offcuts of foam board as a cutting surface. Right, I do need to come clean on this. There's a bit of a gap here. It could have been a bit thicker, so I've got to watch that as I mask out. And this piece here was the original piece. So I need to leave a little gap at the, or overcut it as it were, to fill that in at the back. Anyway, there we are. Right, enough of this harping on. Let's cut some foam board. Now, to try and maximise the use of our foam board, because I've got these 3, obviously those 2 spare, if I bring on here my templates, we can have a jiggle around and maximise the size of these foam boards. remembering that I needed to leave a little gap there because I cut it short. Well, that seems to work out okay. So I'm going to use 3 pieces and I'll have a reasonable offcut here. Now I've marked another line on the outside because of the slack where I brought this line in, so hopefully now we'll see how we get on. My worry is not keeping the blade vertically. Whoa. Well, keeping it straight might be the other problem. That's not as easy as you think, is it? It waves a bit. Perhaps it's more than one cut that's the answer. It has in more than one pass. So now a piece that I really shouldn't get wrong, which is this cut here. At least with this piece, any errors on here, I can always sort of bring it forward, but it's a little bit of a challenge, I must admit. Yep. Now it may seem rather odd, but by placing a little vanity mirror opposite, you can kind of see if you're starting to lose the vertical aspect on your knife. So every now and again I just glance up into the mirror to make sure that the knife is still square. Well, there it is, and I must confess it's not such a bad fit, and any errors on this front face can be taken up by nibbling away on the back edge if I need to push it back or whatever. There are a couple of little bumps, but with a little luck that'll be taken up by the Pico platform edging, so you won't necessarily see that. It's now a case of, I think, gluing these slabs together, checking the clearances, and then fitting the cork, and then finally fitting this. And obviously continually making sure that we've got the trains running clear of the platform. Should there be any slack to be taken up, it's not so crucial on this side because we can hide that reasonably easily. But it seems to be going okay. Now, just for a change, I had a little rethink. I got on to Steve Smith of Railway Laser Lines, and we found a couple of examples online of stations that had a tarmac surface and this type of platform wall, as it were, and they also had paving slabs. And I thought this would make the platforms look much more interesting. So this will be painted a sort of a dirty, filthy concrete colour. Then we'll have a sort of a light to mid-grey of the various slabs going down the outside, and then the darker tarmac in the middle. Now, before we get too carried away, I think we need to sort out the ramp section that's going to go at this end here. Now, this small segment here is probably surplus to requirements, so we'll take that bit off there because that will be underneath the retaining wall when it gets built, so we need to get rid of that. And then we're into the Pico edging. So if this is going to sort of end up in this area here, like so, then that's the kind of area we need to sort of start our ramp. Which isn't necessarily going to be an easy thing to do, is to cut this down. These ramps now, what I've done is I've taken away all the lumps and bumps off the inside. So there you can see one, and the lumps and bumps are obviously to allow you to fit this to your baseboard, and the lugs on the top are you to put your card platform surface. Well, in my case, I don't need any of those because they're going to go smack up against this piece of foam board. So I've removed all of these lumps and bumps carefully because, you know, sharp knives and all that. So I can now figure it out where this is going to go. So I need to kind of mark it up and then come up with a method of how I can actually cut this foam board. Well, there we have it marked out. So I need to start the cut there and obviously go down to almost to the bottom, and I've marked it both sides. But how are we going to cut it? Well, this is where I thought my new investment of the hot wire cutter would come in, whether I can place it on here and then pull it down, but only time will tell. Now, I could well be dreaming here, but I thought that if I clamp a little bit of MDF on either side and then run the new Adobe device down the edges of the MDF, it will give me the cut that I need, if of course the hot wire cutter is actually up to the task. But it seems a sensible way of trying to do it. It's either that or try to slice it with a knife and bring it down that way, but we'll try the hot wire cutter first. Okay, wish me luck. I think the trick is not to kind of go too fast. Bit fumey. Hey, what do you know? That's not too bad at all, is it? Well, the Woodland Scenic one certainly wouldn't have managed that. And then with this piece of platform edging that I've already taken the lumps off, if I sort of just kind of hold it in position, we can see that it's actually not a bad job at all. Now, I want to glue these two together. So I've put a piece of paper toweling underneath to stop hopefully this lot sticking to the baseboard. And the product I'm going to use is from Evo Stick, and it's called Sticks Like. This used to have a far more crude name. I'm sure you can figure it out. Right, you only apply it to one surface, and it has a drying time of round about 15 minutes, although it's kind of an overnight cure to go fully off. So, but they say 15 minutes, so we'll take their word for it. Right, so as you can see, all I'm going to do is push these two together, and then we'll have our bond. Right, let's jiggle them in and get them right. Okay. And obviously the crucial factor is that this front edge is flush. And I think we're good. Right, weigh them down so they don't move. You know, these Hornby catalogues have their uses. And I'll see you in 15 minutes. Well, my stuff has gone off and it seems reasonably secure. So now I need to think about these platform faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these together using the Revel polystyrene cement. Now, having allowed for these to dry, the glue here, I've now snipped off the little spigots that poke through, and I've marked up on the foam where these crossover panels are, because I need to just nibble away a little bit from the foam so that these do actually go flush and there's not a small bulge where these joins actually are. It's a little crude, but just what we need. So now it comes to fitting the platform face onto the face of the foam, and there's this little ridge line, as you can see. Well, that will hang on top of the foam, and when I line it up, the 3mm MDF matches perfectly. And as long as I line up this joint here with a longer line there, I know I'm good to go. What am I going to secure it with? Well, I'm going to use Rocket card glue from Deluxe. Well, somewhat crude, but we got there in the end. This last panel is not glued because obviously I'll need to secure this one as we go on to the next piece of foam. So I shall give this Rocket card glue time to go off, and obviously, well, make sure it's a suitable glue, really. Seems okay. Now that didn't quite work out to be such a good idea, and the glue is still going off, but it seemed to be leaning away from the foam, so I then put another load of Rocket card glue down the back, and then I've taped it in to keep it vertical, and then hopefully that should do the job. If it doesn't, I'll just simply revert to using the sticks-like glue again. Now, whilst this is drying, I'm just going to grab this tin of Mo-Tip grey primer and spray the paving slabs. Now, whilst I'm waiting for various glues to dry, I thought I'd put some paint over this platform edge, and what I'm using, not that I'm recommending it, it's just something that came to hand, is Tamiya's Deck Tan XF55. It's a sort of dirty concrete paint, really. Looks okay, but one of the things about using this paint is that it then gives you a rough base on which to use your weathering powders and that sort of stuff, rather than just trying to put weathering powders on perfectly flat and clean, pristine plastic, in which they don't really adhere. So it's a case of running along this whilst I'm waiting for this next join to dry off, and of course those paving slabs which I sprayed outside. Well, the next piece of foam is well bonded, so it's now a case of gluing on the next piece of platform face. But this time I'm going to use Deluxe Materials Super Phallic glue, and the reason for that is the Rocket card glue just seemed to take a long time to go off, so I'm going to use this, but once more I'm going to leave the last little bit sort of flapping around, because I'll need that to connect up to the next piece of platform face as we work our way along. So back to here, and then as before, I will tape this down to make sure it gets a good bond rather than trying to faff around with clamps. This is a runny old glue, this one. And now, while the latest section is going off, I can set about now gluing down the paving slabs on the original piece. And this time we're back to our old friend rocket card glue. Now I'm going to draw stumps on this one for now and leave the rest of it for part 2, but let's have a little look of what we've actually achieved. With the platforms are in and the facing is done on the side of platform 2. Obviously platform 3 there needs to be addressed. It's worth mentioning as we zoom up to the other end that the whole of this platform system at the moment is still removable. It is just one big piece of foam with the platform fascias glued on. And before I fit this for the final time, I will need to come in and weather this track down and obviously ballast it and sort out this hillside to make sure all the vegetation's done, as well as of course making good the damage along the top where I remove that fence. I'll get Steve Smith from Railway Laser Lines to make me up some more of this segment because I need to come along here and a little bit around the back there. Now looking a little closer, obviously we've got a little bit of a gap here and this platform needs to run out and join up with the soil here and obviously put a fence. And now the embankment is much more, it's much shorter, let's say, but of course this embankment needs now to go off in that direction and then deplete until it becomes a retaining wall. So I imagine an embankment will come down to around here and then we will need to construct some form of retaining wall and then this will then make its way round to the rest of the layout. And obviously next time we will fit the platform surface, we will fit the retaining wall, do all the vegetation stuff and the general paraphernalia hopefully that goes with the station. One thing you may not be aware of is once this platform is in platform 1, there will naturally be a footbridge coming across here to allow passengers across, and also probably some kind of a walkway between platform 2 and platform 1 for the staff to get barrows across that can't go over the footbridge, because that's how it was back in the 60s and 70s. You had these wooden sort of walkways across the tracks. But the big question is what does this look like from the train? So let's run the camera train and let's have a little look. Well, I hope you'd agree that the footage from the track camera was a great success. I was really well pleased with how gentle the curve was, with no sort of bumps and ruts sort of sticking out. It was quite a nice, decent, smooth run, which is what I was after. I must confess, it's a relief because you never know. You keep peering over the top to check your clearances and you never know whether you've gotten away with it. But at the end of the day, the whole thing still remains movable, you know, for a sort of 3-5 millimeters. You can move it either way and give it a sort of a tweak, so it wasn't the end of the world if it didn't quite fit. There we are. The use of the blue foam boards was a great success, and also the hot wire tool. I don't know how I would have cut those ramps so accurately without it. Now if you're into those, I'll leave a link in the show more tab, like I say, both for the foam boards and the, I can't remember, it's called the Hyundai hot wire cutter or whatever it is. Anyway, I'll leave a link down there. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. the algorithm likes it and puts it out to other people who are interested in this kind of model railway landscaping. Talking of landscaping, there's a video here, and this is the first of the viaduct videos and shows you how I went about building that. And as usual, I would particularly like to thank the patrons who make it all possible. So there's a link to become one there, and also a link if you're not a subscriber. Subscribing is free. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.